All right, welcome back to Becoming the Remnant. Today I have a very fun guest. I've been saying special guest a lot, so I'm trying to think of different words. But today I have a very fun guest, my mom. So we've had my dad, and now this is my mom, Rhonda Garver. Would you like to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about who you are, what you do?
Absolutely. I am Destiny's mother, of course. I've also been in full-time pulpit ministry for 32 years, 2 years as a missionary, and then 30 years pastoring with my husband. We pastor a thriving, growing church here in Madison, Alabama, and that's me.
That's you?
That's me.
You also just released a new book. Did you talk about that?
I did. It's called God's Heart for Women. It's all about women and what God thinks of them, why we were created to begin with. But also I dive right in to the subject of women in ministry and how does God feel about that from the Word? What does the Word really say about that? And so I'm really happy. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you've been doing a lot of interviews on women, so we're actually not doing that today. We will do that, I'm sure, at some point. But today I wanted to talk to you about Love Walk, actually. That's kind of, you were for a while. It's kind of less now, I've noticed. People are not saying it's still people's favorite class, but you used to get like unanimously on the BI videos, my favorite class was Love Walk, Love Walk. But I think it's because it is, a subject that people deal with so often, whether or not, and a lot of people don't even realize that they're dealing with it. We talked about emotions, or Dad did yesterday in his sermon, but like a lot of people don't even realize that they're having issues in that area.
Yeah. It's a universal problem.
Yeah.
Everybody has to forgive people. Yeah. Everybody goes through stuff. Nobody gets out of this life without life beating the crud out of them. The devil sees to it. Yeah. And so everybody has things that they have to get past.
Yeah.
So it's a universal topic. That's why it helps so many people.
So when you think about Love Walk, I mean, we kind of think about unforgiveness. So can you kind of talk about, I don't know if you want to go, you call it the anatomy of an offense. Do you want to start there, or where would you want to start with it?
I think that's fine. Like I said, stuff happens to everybody. There's not anybody who gets through life without, I will say this, not everybody gets through a day. Most days without having to forgive somebody.
Yeah,
the jerk who cut you off in traffic.
That's true.
Or, the person who cut in front of you in line, or, it could be much worse than that. But everybody, it's a universal problem. And, I think that until you learn to deal with it, at least for me, it was a huge issue. Mm-hmm. That's why I have so much revelation on it, is because of my childhood, because of the things that I went through. And the reason I got into it was because the Lord dealt with me about it to set me free. So anytime that you are offended at somebody, you're hurt, they've hurt you, or you're upset with them, it's because you have chosen to take the offense. Yeah. Most people don't realize it's a decision. Mm-hmm. And they're so used to just shooting from the hip and taking it without even thinking. They don't even realize they decided. Mm-hmm. But when that opportunity for offense comes, you really do have a choice. You can either get offended and get angry or get hurt and upset with them, or you can choose to let it go. But you do actually choose. And if you choose to walk in love with people, which is what the Lord wants us to do, because if you think about it, how much has He forgiven us for?
Mm-hmm. It's true.
I grew up in church. I don't have a testimony. I wasn't a gangster. I never was an international drug dealer or anything. And so I don't have that kind of testimony. I was born on the pew almost and raised in church all my life. But even I had such a debt of sin to God that I needed forgiven. Mm-hmm. And even things after I started serving Him, especially when I was very young, that I did, that, I offended Him. I'm absolutely certain I did. Mm-hmm. And so I needed forgiveness for all those things. And because of that has really helped me in being able to choose to forgive those who wronged me, because in comparison, and I'm not minimizing how cruel people can be. Yeah. Because there's cruelty in this world that I don't begin to understand. people killing people for their tennis shoes and, choosing to abuse children and rape them and murder them. I'm glad I can't comprehend what would motivate someone to do that. Well, I know who is motivating them. But anyway, I guess my point is, no matter whether what you're going through is little or whether it's huge, the process is the same.
Yeah.
You still can't allow anger and hatred and bitterness in your heart if you're going to walk free, if you're going to be free and live the kind of life that God wants you to live. And again, I'm not minimizing what people have been through. To a certain extent, my husband's been faithful to me as far as I know. No, I'm kidding. He's been my husband. I have a great husband. But besides him, before him, I could just about my childhood match somebody hell for things that I went through. And because of that, I had a hard time emotionally. I was up, I was down, I was unstable. Sometimes I'd be doing good, sometimes I wouldn't be doing good. And it wasn't until the Lord healed all of that in me and walked me through the process of forgiving those people that I realized how much freedom I needed. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
That's how the world lives.
Yeah.
They live all bound up and don't even realize they're all bound up.
Yeah.
And especially in this area, people carry around things. I've talked to people and they're so angry and they're so bitter and they can hardly get out what they're mad about. And I'll be, how long ago did this happen? And they're like, 40 years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you carried that rage, that anger, that hurt for 40 years. I watched it real close up with my own mother. They were, like I said, they were in ministry, and my dad was ornery. He did a bunch of stuff he shouldn't have done. Really, seriously, he did. And so she was really hurt. And after they got divorced, she was really bitter because he was off with his new girlfriends, living like the devil. And she was here working jobs, trying to raise kids, and he wouldn't help. Anyway, I'm not rehashing all that. But my point is this, she was angry, and in the world would say justifiably so.
Yeah.
Justifiably so. She hated him. But I watched what it did to her. She had no joy. She had no peace. She couldn't hardly sleep at night for being so mad at him. It began to affect her health. And she looked tired and she looked, worn out. And I happened to be in the meeting with her when she got free. And the minister had spoken on forgiveness, and then she answered the altar call. And I happened to go in the room with her. I don't even remember why I was in the room, but I happened to be in the room, and two ladies were kneeling with her, talking to her. And one of the ladies asked her something that has rung in my ears ever since. She said, "Hasn't he stolen enough of your life? You got to let this go."
Yeah.
Not for him.
Yeah.
But for you.
Well, so many people too, they think that their grudge is is hurting the other person. Like they're like, oh, me holding this grudge or me holding this whatever, because you did me wrong, it's hurting you, but it's hurting the other person, but it's not, it's hurting you.
My dad couldn't have cared less.
Right. Yeah.
If he cared about her, he wouldn't have done it in the first place.
Right.
But beyond that, he's out drinking and clubbing and, with a new chick under his arm, whatever. And he didn't care. Yeah. But she was the one miserable.
Right.
I think it's Corrie ten Boom who said, forgiveness is setting the captive free and then realizing you were the one being held captive. When you forgive, you don't set them free. You set yourself free.
Yeah.
Because that unforgiveness keeps you in that painful moment. You're tied to that moment.
Yeah.
And that pain, you relive it. And the devil's a master at instant replays. He'll play it over and over. You'll just be sitting there and all of a sudden realize, for 20 minutes you've been meditating on how hurt you are and playing it over and over in your head. He'll keep you miserable. And sometimes people think, well, if I forgive, that means I think it's okay. I'm excusing what they did. Listen, there'll never be an excuse for what they did.
Yeah.
It'll never be okay. What they did to you will never be okay. And that is not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is you saying, I'm not going to let you take one more day of my joy, of my happiness, of my peace. I want to be free of you.
Yeah.
You've taken enough of my life.
Yeah.
That is what forgiveness is.
Yeah.
It's not saying what you did was okay. What they did will never be okay. But it sets you free. It restores your joy. It restores your peace. It sets you free from them because you're stuck.
Yeah.
Until you can forgive emotionally, you are stuck.
Yeah.
And they're stealing. They're constantly stealing from you. They may have moved on. You may not have had any contact with them for 30 years, but they're still taking your life from you, stealing your joy, stealing your peace, stealing your sleep. And that's just, you ought not give anybody that much power.
I think too, part of it is realizing, because like you talked about, you're angry, people are angry with people a lot. But I think one thing too that we don't even realize is anger is typically like a secondary emotion. Okay, I'm angry because I'm hurt or I'm sad or I'm whatever. And even, it may not even be, we're talking about maybe things that we would consider serious offenses, adultery, whatever you're talking about. But even like in my own life, sometimes I've had to deal with things that were maybe even like imagined offenses. I know you talk about like,
yes.
You walk into a room and everybody was talking about you, but for me,
everybody quits talking and you assume they were talking about you. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But even like in my own life, like I had to deal with what I assumed people thought about me. And then it made me upset.
Yeah.
And so I feel like sometimes realizing who you need to forgive and why you feel that way, tracing it back down to that root of unforgiveness can honestly sometimes be half the battle. Because it's just like, well, why am I upset? Why am I, why does this certain thing cause me rage? Like I said, in my own life, it was, I assumed that people, because of who I am, people thought about me a certain way.
Yes.
And they held me to this whatever standard. Whereas a lot of people, some people maybe did, but a lot of people didn't. And I had to realize like, oh, I created that narrative in my mind.
Yes.
And I've been, so how would you, if it's more of an imagined offense or even just the way, they feel like everybody perceives them a certain way, and how would you help somebody like that?
I think figuring out what you're in offense about has a lot to do with the way you remember. Because if you think of a person and waves of pain roll over you, or you think of a person and you have a negative response immediately, an anger response, then that tells you there's something in there that's not been healed.
It could even be a place or a group of people, or
without a doubt. I was walking through the grocery store and I walked by this poor man who wore the cologne of a guy who broke my heart. And I walked by him and I got a whiff of his cologne and I started ugly crying in the grocery store.
Honestly, that story, I'm more impressed that you remembered the smell of the cologne. Because if anybody asked me to identify the smell of any cologne of any guy I ever dated, I would not.
It wasn't even on a conscious level.
Yeah.
I just caught a whiff of it, and it took me back to him and what he did, and immediately I had this emotional response. And I don't know if I didn't turn around to see if he was paying attention to me, but I'm ugly crying in the grocery store. This is when I was young.
Funny, but it's kind of funny.
I know. I was young. I was in my early 20s, but it was way before your dad. But anyway, I didn't even realize how much hurt was still in there from that. But those kind of things are clues. If you have a negative response to somebody, you see him and you just think, puh, examine that. Why? What in the world is in me that I'm doing that? So
even I've noticed in conversations with people, like even like topics or something will come up, like it kind of makes me think of like maybe church hurt, or doesn't, but just as an example, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Like I've been in conversations with people and they'll be like, oh, like I don't believe in church because of like the institution and I don't like it, and then they turn and they start getting aggressive. I'm like, oh, like church has hurt you somehow.
Yes.
Or you've seen, but that just as an example, like something can come up and you can tell a person like shifts or they start getting defensive or
I met a lady who was a visitor here. One of our church members brought a lady. And I'd never met this lady before, never had any contact with her, the visiting woman. And immediately she was hostile to Mark and I. I mean, she was a visitor. I'd never seen this woman before in my life. I never had any contact with her. She was openly hostile. And I thought, okay, I don't know what's going on in your brain, but I really just let it go. She was just a visitor, and she went. But our church member, her husband was out of town, and she became very ill. She was hospitalized. So back in those days, Daddy and I didn't have as much to do. And so I told him, I said, why don't you drop me off at the hospital while you go run errands and let me go sit with her for a couple of hours, because I know her husband's out of town.
Yeah.
And so he dropped me off at the hospital. I went up to her hospital room, and I opened the door, and there sat that lady that was so openly hostile to me and Daddy. And I thought, oh my goodness, so I thought, I'm stuck in this room for how many hours did I tell him? But I thought, as long as I'm here, I'm going to get in her head, because our church member was not that talkative at the moment. So I thought, I'm going to get in her head. So I just started asking her questions. And at first she was unkind. She was short. She didn't want to talk to me. But I just kept poking around in her brain with questions. And finally she began to open up to me and was telling me that she had no tolerance for people like us. And I was like, people like us? And it went back to something she had experienced in a prior church.
Yeah.
And she had just assumed that we were teaching things that hurt people, like the church she came out of, because they did teach things wrongly. And so I was like, well, what in the world? So she began to tell me what they had taught her, and it was wrong, and it was destructive, and it was hurtful. But I told her, I said, it doesn't mean that everybody who teaches on this subject teaches it the way you were taught. Yeah. So after a few hours, we left in a really good headspace. But I think that's an example of what you're talking about. She had assumed that that's what we do, when it really had no bearing in reality.
Yeah. And even outside of church, people do that in relationships. Like, oh, a man treated me this way, so all men are going to treat me this way. Or, I had a friend do this, so I can never let anybody in that close again, ever again. And so I think that's another reason why, yes, forgiveness is for you for the most part, but even it's not fair to new people coming into your life, or people that the Lord brings into your life, to view them through that filter of hurt that somebody else did.
Absolutely.
It's not right what that person did, but you have to get healed, so that if you were, say, we're in unforgiveness, I think of kind of the way you were, you thought all men were whatever.
Scum. And if you're a man watching this, I didn't know you then, so don't worry about it. I'm not talking about you.
And so when the Lord brought Dad, you had a lot of all men are this
I did.
way,
I had a lot to overcome. Yeah. I really did. Matter of fact, because I was in disobedience in an area that had to do with relationships with God, He asked me to do something, and I don't have time to go into the whole story, but He asked me to do something, and because I wasn't willing, I immediately popped up on the radar of every jerk within a 100-mile radius. I got my heart broken so many times. So I really genuinely was almost of the opinion that men are worthless. They're just mean and selfish and pigs. And so when Mark and I began to talk on the phone, I knew it was God. But the moment we hit a snag, I'm like, I knew it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I went to bed that night, and the Lord woke me up, and He said, I need you to come talk to me. So I got out of bed where I would stay awake, and I went in the other room, and I was talking to the Lord, and He said, this is really funny. He said, Mark was praying and asked me to tell you something, which made me laugh, because I was like, okay, they're pretty tight if the Lord's doing His business. So He said, Rhonda, he's a good guy. You can trust him. Now, when that comes from the mouth of somebody who knows someone, God knew everything about Mark. Yeah. And if God said you can trust this dude, that's probably the only reason we're together is because God vouched for him. Yeah. But even after that, I have to be honest, even though he was such a good guy, I spent about 6 months waiting for the other shoe to drop. I would have these terrible dreams where he did these horrible things to me. And I'd wake up so mad at him. And I would be like, how could you? And he's like, I didn't do a thing. And I'm like, you did do it. But, still had the emotional from my dream.
Yeah.
But it took me, honestly, probably about 6 months to finally realize, like, oh my gosh, he's probably not going to destroy me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to turn into this horrible creature that I despise.
Yeah.
But I was waiting for about 6 months. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And, I think somebody said it this way. If you don't get your wounds healed, you're going to bleed on people who never cut you.
Yeah, that's true. That's so good.
So that was an example of what I'm talking about. I was bleeding on him from a prior wound.
Yeah.
And he didn't deserve it. And of course I got over it. He is a good guy. But anyway, so it's exactly what you're talking about. It can be real or it can be imagined. It could be big or it could be little. But even sometimes the littlest things can hurt when you feel misunderstood or betrayed by a friend or, it's true.
Yeah. I think too, like, even those things can make us, view everybody a certain way.
Yes.
Or, they can have us put filters on life. And, it can be hard to be able to minister to other people. Or like, if somebody would have come to you needing help or needing counsel as a friend during that time when you thought all men were whatever, if they would have been going through a problem with a guy, you would have been like, yep, all men are trash, leave him, sister. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because of your wounds, you're not able to help pour into other people in those areas. And so again, it's just another reason why, it's so important.
It really is. It's absolutely the truth, because I would not have been able to separate my own feelings. You're right.
Yeah. So I kind of want to talk about, too, the Bible says that faith works by love. So can you kind of talk about what happens, if we do still have those offenses and the effect that it can have on our faith?
Hooey. The Bible says in James that judgment will be merciless to the one who has shown no mercy. So let's start there. If you need forgiveness from me, I'm going to be quick to forgive you. Because I want that same mercy extended to me when I need it. Yeah. Not only from you, but from God. Yeah. People who can't forgive others also judge themselves without mercy. They're as harshly as they judge others, they judge themselves.
I think that's something, I'm going to stop right there. I think it's something that people don't get, because I was one of those people.
Yeah.
Very critical, very judgmental, but it was because I was way more judgmental on myself, and I don't think we realize, like, a lot of people who are like that, like, truly are hurting on the inside. Like, yes, they're prickly on the outside, but it's because they're prickly on the inside too.
Without a doubt. I had a friend in Rhema, a lady that the Lord told me to befriend, who was what I call a porcupine person. You barely brush up against them and their quills are out. They're going to hurt you. Yeah. And I mean, she was so mean and so rude. Nobody could stand to be around her. And I was stuck in a car with her. The Lord does this to me. I got stuck in a car with her on a road trip, just the two of us. And I decided I was going to use the time and get in her head. And it turns out she was so hurt. Her life had been terrible to that point. And that's, I think, the first time I realized that hurting people hurt people. Hurting people hurt people. So that helps me to be a little more merciful with the other porcupine people that I run across, And there's a church sign not too far from here right now that says, everybody you meet is fighting a battle you don't see. Yeah. And that's absolutely the truth. Yeah. We don't know what people are going through. Maybe the dude who cut you off in traffic just got a terrible diagnosis at the doctor. Found out they're not going to live or might not live, or maybe they just got a call from the hospital that their parent is dying, and they're, you know what I'm saying? They're rushing to get there, and they're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about them cutting you off in traffic, or you don't know what people go through. And so you have to extend mercy to people. You have to be patient with them. You have to understand that they're fighting things you're never going to see. They're fighting battles. And I guarantee you, hurting people hurt people. So that doesn't excuse the hurt they're inflicting on everyone else, but it does maybe cause us to not throw them out.
Yeah.
When otherwise we might be tempted to do so. And the Bible says, like you said, faith works by love. I need my faith to work.
Yeah.
Everybody needs their faith in God to work. And in order for it to work, you got to be walking in love with people. My father in the faith, Kenneth E. Hagin, he said if there was sickness trying to attach itself to his body, he would confess the word, he'd go over the scriptures, he would refresh himself in the character of God, he would read the scriptures on healing, and then when he was sure that he was in the right place, he would make his professions of faith over his own body. But he said, if I don't get healed right away, he said, I go back and ask myself, am I in unforgiveness anywhere? Am I out of love with somebody?
Yeah.
And he said almost 100% of the time, that's what he found.
Yeah.
And so I need my faith to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I'm driving on the interstate and a semi is hurtling towards me at a high rate of speed, you might not have time to sit there and say, Father, I choose to forgive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to live with a clean slate between you and God. So that your faith can work in an instant.
Yeah.
So that when you only have time to scream, Jesus, help, you're right there.
Right.
And not that he wouldn't have mercy on people as much as he can have mercy, but I want a clear channel.
Yeah.
I have to have a clear channel every day. I am aware of my enemy, and I'm aware how much he hates us, how much he hates this church, how much he hates what we're doing. And therefore, I'm very careful to maintain a clear channel with my Father so that when I need in an instant to raise my shield of faith and draw my sword of the Spirit, I'm clear.
Yeah.
There's nothing there that would block that with God. And you know what? You got to get to the point where it doesn't matter what anybody did to me. It costs me too much to take that offense.
Yeah.
It costs me too much to let you get under my skin like that. I am, it's really interesting because God said himself, he said, even I am he that blotteth out thy transgressions for mine own sake. I hadn't really thought about it until I studied that out. If God allowed Satan to keep him in turmoil over people's behavior, he could keep God upset 24/7, 365.
He could.
There is so much nonsense in this world. There are so many people doing such terrible things.
Yeah.
Ministers even, people who are Christians who are supposed to represent him, acting like total jerks and making him look bad. If he didn't forgive us for his own sake, then Satan could keep him in constant pain.
Yeah.
So he said, I choose to forgive for mine own sake. And that's where we have to get.
Yeah.
Where me being angry at you, me holding unforgiveness against you, it's costing me too much. Anytime we allow anger and hatred and bitterness in our heart, now we're the one in sin.
Yeah.
You could have been totally the innocent party. Maybe you did absolutely nothing wrong, nothing to deserve what was done to you. But the moment you allow anger and hatred and bitterness in your heart, that comes between you and God because now you're in sin. Now you know you're wrong and your heart convicts you even though they deserved it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It clogs up your channel with God.
Yeah.
And I decided a long time ago, I am not going to give anybody that much power to hurt my relationship with God.
No, that's so good.
If they were to drag me out of this church and beat me in the parking lot for preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, then so be it. I'm going to have to get over it. I'm going to have to forgive because I need that clear channel.
Yeah.
Because I need God when I need him to hear me and to answer. And I'm not going to allow unforgiveness and bitterness and angst to clog up my channel with God.
Yeah.
I need him too bad. I need him every day.
Even on a smaller scale, like I think we were talking about it recently. It might have even been yesterday. I don't know. The days are running together. But, even like dealing with things when it happens, even if it's an argument, a lot of people would say that that's just you and I's personality because we're pretty confrontational people. If people don't know that about us, we tend to be a little bit confrontational. But I mean, I think that's something that everybody should do. I mean, I don't understand, like we're talking about having an argument and like you just let it go, or I'll deal with it later.
You pretend it didn't happen,
right,
and you let it fester. You don't deal with it.
Yeah, or somebody says something snippy and you can tell they're offended and you just, I don't have time to deal with it. But really those things, could be clogging your channel, as we're saying, between you and God. Like, why would you wait to deal with them? Why not just, I think because a lot of people don't have, because it takes courage and it can be awkward to be like, hey, you seem upset with me. What's going on?
It is not easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's so important because then the rest of the day, you're just going to be thinking like, well, I don't know why they said that and what was the deal, you're just going to be stewing on it,
and the devil's going to be in your ear magnifying it,
and then by the time you can deal with it, it's 20 times bigger.
That's exactly right, because it's not only that, when they said this, I bet they had there's something underlying when they said that to me, and then it gets bigger and bigger in your brain until all of a sudden you're hating somebody who didn't say good morning properly. But yes, I have worked really hard in my life because I come from a family who didn't deal with things, who let things go until they couldn't stand each other. And it hurt their long-term relationships with that person. I'm all about short-term pain for long-term gain. In other words, I'd rather go through the short-term pain of a knockdown, drag-out fight, if you will, a discussion verbally. I'm not talking about wrestling each other to the ground. I'm just about, let's hash it out. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it hurts, let's deal with it, because that's going to produce the long-term gain of peace and understanding and love, free flow of love and good relationship. But what a lot of people do is they go short-term gain of not having to deal with it. They, in their brain, they've gained not having to deal with an uncomfortable situation. But what they're doing is they're trading short-term gain for long-term pain, because it's still there, still festering.
Well, because they think too, they're like, oh, we'll just get over this.
Yes.
But then when there's a bigger issue, it's like, and then that other time when you didn't, like, it's gonna come up.
Totally, 100%. Totally 100%.
So,
I grew up in a family where nobody dealt with anything, and I just decided I'm not doing this anymore. I would rather us fight it out. And, I think you and I, when you were a kid, we're both kind of that way. And we used to freak Daddy out because we would be going at it.
Sometimes with volume.
With volume, yes. And he'd be like, stop. But you know what? At the end, we hashed it out. We understood each other. We forgave each other, and we moved on. Whereas my family of origin, they had just not dealt with it, let it simmer, let it fester, and then, have to go, to the graveyard when somebody dies and handle all your business out there where they can't be restored.
And then too, you're not ever, like, the depth of that relationship is, like, you can't ever have a deep relationship with that person. I feel like if you're always, like, just sweeping things under the rug, like, to me, you can't have as deep of a relationship as maybe you were meant to with that person, because you're always like, well, they did that, and so I'm going to push them away just a little bit. No
question. It's always running in the back of your brain, like an open app, of unforgiveness. It's always back there, hindering you, and I'd rather duke it out. If the end result is gain, I'll have it out with anybody. I'll have it out with our employees. You know, I have not let things go. When Mark was like, can we just wait for this to blow over? And I'm like, no, it's not going to blow over until we deal with what's really going on. Because if somebody's snarky or if something's going on, there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
And everybody has bad days. And if they come and they say, you know, gosh, I'm really sorry, I was just grumpy. You know, somebody had a bad day. All these things have happened to me. That's, you know, that's easy. But sometimes somebody's snark and constant sniping is because they really do have something against you in their heart that needs to be uncovered and dealt with.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth it to go the short-term pain for long-term gain route.
Yeah. I think too, I've told a friend, you know, because they were asking me how I'm so comfortable having these conversations, and they're like, well, like, what if you take it to somebody, you know, hey, you seem upset, whatever, and they don't fess up to it? And I'm like, well, then you gave them the opportunity, and, you know, you forgive on your end, and, you know, there's nothing you can do about it if they don't want to have the discussion, if they don't want to be vulnerable.
100%. The Bible says, as far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men.
Yeah.
But there are people who wouldn't be at peace with you because A, they're not willing to deal with it, or B, they're not willing to forgive you and move on. But you know what? That's their choice. You can forgive and move on whether they do or not, and be at peace if you know you've done everything that you can do. You know, there are people that I've done what I know to do, and then I just say to God, he's your son. Or she's your daughter. You're going to have to deal with them because I've done what I know to do. If you want me to do or say anything else, you're going to have to tell me. Otherwise, I'm going to trust that you got them. They're your kid. You know how to handle them because I've done what I know to do. So, but I think it's important to do what you know to do, to open that up. To have those discussions that are uncomfortable so that there can be real relationship here. I will say, even in any relationship, walls between people are built one brick at a time. One unresolved issue at a time, and that becomes a brick between you, and then another unresolved issue, and then another unresolved issue, until you can't even find them anymore emotionally. You can't get to them. There's something always huge between you that cuts off that relationship. And I'm just not willing to do it. I'd rather hash it out or roll on the ground. No, I'm kidding. Pull a hair. No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. We've never done that. But you know what I mean. I'd rather have it out and it be done and over with and in our past, and us understand and love each other and forgive each other and move forward than just not have to go through the pain of dealing with it.
No, I think too, a lot of people get kind of confused too with, you know, when we talk about forgiving people, that doesn't have to necessarily always mean reconciliation or restoration of a relationship to how it was. So can you maybe talk about how, like, if somebody is forgiving someone, but yet they might need to maintain a boundary with people, you know, how could that look?
Well, forgiveness doesn't mean, in my estimation, that you just act like it never happened. Because I think that's dangerous. Because that's how women stay in abusive relationships. I know I'm a Christian and I got to forgive. So yes, he beat me up yesterday, but hasn't today so far. You know what I'm saying? So it keeps you in places you ought not be. You can forgive somebody. I say this in my Love Walk class. You can forgive somebody while they're doing their time. If somebody hurts you or somebody hurts your child or somebody steals from you, there is, or does whatever, there is absolutely nothing wrong. Matter of fact, it's godly to hold them accountable for their behavior. Because love gets somebody help when they need help. And if somebody is acting like that, they need help. Sweeping it under the rug and pretending like it never happened in the name of forgiveness is dangerous and stupid. You're not even helping them because the behavior is going to continue. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, look, I understand that you went through a lot, but this behavior is not acceptable. And if you don't go get counseling and you don't work through this, I don't know if I can stay here. Because if you don't, you're not even helping them. You're just condemning yourself to a lifetime of pain unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And like I said, let's say somebody breaks into your house and beats you up or jumps you at the mall or, whatever. You can forgive them, but that doesn't mean you don't press charges.
Yeah.
Because you're not helping them by just pretending it never happened and letting them go so they can beat somebody else who might pull a gun on them and send them to hell early unnecessarily. Do you know what I'm saying? So in going to the police, in holding them accountable, you are setting boundaries. This behavior is not acceptable, and I love you too much to let it continue. I use this example, let's say you find out your son is dealing drugs. Well, you can forgive them, but you also need to tell them, you got to go get some help. You got to go get some counseling. And if you're not willing to do that, then I'm not willing to find you in a ditch someday. So I'm going to turn you in. If it means you go to jail, then maybe you'll get off drugs while you're doing your time. Maybe I'm hard. Okay. You should pray for my daughter. No, she's already grown. But
I never went to jail.
No.
But I never dealt drugs. So I don't think you had to consider.
But my point is accountability.
Yeah.
And getting people help.
Yeah.
When they engage in bad behavior, not just slipping it under the rug, because we don't help people that way. I know people who absolutely ignore somebody's horrendous behavior because they don't want to deal with it. They would rather pretend it never happened, but then it never gets fixed, and that person just keeps going and hurting more people and doing more damage to more people because nobody's willing to get in their face and say, quit acting like a jerk because you're hurting yourself. This behavior is not acceptable. It's off-putting to people. And you're doing nothing but hurting yourself.
Yeah. I think though, even like after you reconcile with people, like even if it's on a smaller scale, somebody didn't jump you at the mall and nobody's stealing drugs, but I love how all your examples are so extreme. But
welcome to how my brain works.
Like even I'm thinking like, say it was a friend, somebody you were really close with, and there was a falling out and you guys, whatever, you can forgive each other, you can reconcile, but you don't have to be best friends again. You can maybe they will be your best friend again, and that's great. But I think a lot of people think like, okay, now I have to try to figure out how to go back to the way things were. And that's maybe not, you've moved on, they've moved on, your life is different, their life is different. And so it may not look like, going back to the way things were. If it was a couple that got divorced and they'd been, upset with each other all these years, 10 years later, they forgive each other, or one spouse, starts learning and forgives the other one. That doesn't mean you call them and say, I think we should get back together.
No, forgiveness has to do with your heart.
Right. Yeah. And I think I was saying that because I think that's where people get it confused sometimes. They're like, okay, I've forgiven this person. Now how do I get back to the way things were? And it's not that necessarily.
You can forgive a snake for striking you, understanding a snake is just a snake. That doesn't mean you have to keep hugging that snake. Yeah. And invite it in your house. You know what I'm saying?
And even too, you can genuinely, like, maybe they really have changed and you've forgiven them, and you can be, wow, praise God, they're changing, and maybe they used to be a snake and now they're getting a little less snaky. But that again doesn't mean that you've got to be as close as maybe you once were.
I've heard Daddy say it this way. He said, God can restore marriage to you. He can restore relationships to you, but the people may have changed. The scenery may change. Yeah. It's still God's plan that you be happy and fulfilled, but that doesn't mean you can ever go back. Yeah. Matter of fact, we had a gentleman in the church, which I don't know that he's ever listening. I don't know what happened to him. But anyway, he had gotten a divorce and was now married to somebody else. Mm-hmm. Well, he decided after hearing some teaching on walking in love that he had to divorce this wife and go back to his first wife and try to get her to divorce her husband and get back with him. And you know what? Sadly, it actually worked. They got back together. They didn't last 2 years again. So now there's 2 more divorces,
Yeah.
and 2 more kids who had to endure, 2 more families that got torn
Yeah.
apart by divorce. And do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Please, if you hear my love walk teaching, that is not what I'm saying. God may restore marriage to you, but that doesn't mean you can go back and reclaim the life you had. It doesn't even mean you should.
Yeah.
It means your heart. Forgiveness has to do with your heart and what goes on in your heart and in your mind, not who's in your life and who's not. For heaven's sake, don't forgive somebody who beats you every day. That is not what God is asking you to do. That is not forgiveness. That's just silliness.
Well, forgive them, yes, but you don't have to.
But forgiveness has to do with your heart.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to stay.
Right.
You don't have to hug a snake.
Right.
Just because you've forgiven it for biting you doesn't mean you have to keep hugging that snake.
Yeah.
So I think that people don't understand that differentiation.
Yeah.
So you can't always go back and get yourself back in the same situation, nor should you.
Yeah.
And that's not always what forgiveness leads to.
Yeah.
Forgiveness it means you're free from the pain and the anger of that situation. And then, you know what? Move on.
Yeah.
Move on. So let God bring new people into your life. Let God heal you, but it doesn't mean you have to go back and try to restore old marriages or old relationships.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize that, like, with the help of the Lord, like, you can heal from those things on your own. Like,
Yes.
you don't have to maybe ever hear an "I'm sorry" or "and I should have" or, "you were right" or anything like that, because I think that's what a lot of people are waiting for, but you don't have to hear those things.
100%. I have had people tell me when they apologize, I'll forgive them.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, you're going to be sitting here 50 years from now.
Yeah.
50 years of misery, 50 years of no peace, 50 years of no joy while you nurse that anger. You're going to give yourself ulcers. You're going to go prematurely gray. You're going to be unhappy and unfulfilled, just waiting for something you may never get.
Yeah.
If they don't ever apologize, and they may not,
Yeah.
you still have to forgive. That's like, Corrie ten Boom, when she got out of the prison camp, she had to forgive that guard. She had to forgive the people who tortured them. She had to forgive the people who killed her sister and her father. But that doesn't mean she goes back into the prison camp and tries to make it right now.
Right.
No, you forgive and you go on. You move
Yeah.
on and let God restore marriage to you. Let God restore life to you. But it doesn't mean you go back to the situation that was so unhealthy for you.
Yeah.
In fact, please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't.
That's so true. I think a lot of people, I've just seen a lot of people, even maybe not in marriage, I was talking about, but friendships.
Yes.
They try to go back but it's okay. You've moved on, and then you just believe God to bring whatever right relationships, he needs to bring. So
There are seasons even amongst family
yeah.
when you may have to withdraw for a while.
Yeah.
Not that you would ever completely stop loving them or wishing them well.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you have to stand there and let them punch you in the face every time you see them. No, you set boundaries with people. This is not acceptable behavior. And, I'm not willing to put up with this.
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to change, then I'm going to have to stay away from you. And for my own peace of mind, for my own health. For how long, Pastor Rhonda? Until however long. Maybe forever. I hope not. But you can forgive them and not have anything negative towards them and still not have to be punched in the face by allowing them back in your life all the time.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think, though, that as Christians, we're not supposed to be like that. We're supposed to a lot of people will say, like, well, Jesus said to turn the other cheek. If somebody hits you, turn the other cheek. So what would you say to that?
I would balance it out with the other side of the scriptures, which honestly I need to teach more on. There's a scripture that says, if your brother offends you, confront him. Have it out.
Yeah.
That's scriptural.
Yeah.
Go to him. Tell him. If he won't hear you, take somebody with you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the one you need to take is a police officer.
Yeah.
You stole this from me, or you did this to me, and I went to you and you weren't willing. So now I'm coming again, just like the Bible said, but I'm bringing somebody with me. Maybe the somebody you need to bring is a police officer who can handle and deal with that situation. The Bible doesn't Forgiveness doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable
Yeah.
for their behavior. It doesn't mean they get a free pass. Matter of fact, don't give them a free pass. You can hold them accountable without having anger, hatred, and bitterness in your own heart. You can go, you can keep people at arm's length if you need to. And as long as they fully understand why, as long as you've given them a chance to adjust, and they won't.
Yeah.
But if they're not willing, and I would say when it comes to situations like people having an affair on you or hurting you or hurting your children, I would say maybe once, forgive. If they do it again, leave. But then you need to set those kind of boundaries. Okay, you cussed me out when you were mad. I want you to know I'm not willing to live like this.
Yeah.
So if you ever talk to me that way again, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out. I love you, and I want to be with you. But if you're going to behave like this, I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
And I'm out. That is healthy.
Yeah.
That is healthy for them, because then they know what's wrong. You've told them, you've gone to them, you've explained, like the Bible says to do, this is what's up. This is why there's this rift between us. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So then the ball's in their court. And if they persist in the negative behavior, leave.
Yeah.
Be done.
Yeah.
So I know the Bible says God hates divorce, but he also hates children being abused. He also hates you being abused. Do you understand? People don't balance that out very well.
But I do.
They don't. People don't balance that out very well. There may be times when God asks you to put up with atrocious behavior, but he would have to tell you that.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Smith Wigglesworth, he was a fantastic minister, had all kinds of miracles, did all kinds of stuff. He was not born again, and his wife would go to church. And one night he was really angry that she went, and they fought about it, and she said, I love you, but I need to go to church. And so she went to church, and when she came home, he had locked the doors and somehow rigged it where she couldn't get in the house. So she asked the Lord what to do and felt like she just needed to be kind and patient with him. So she slept on the porch. And when he opened the door in the morning, she said, good morning, sweetheart. What do you want for breakfast?
Ooh, that's a stronger woman
Lord
than me.
Jesus.
Ooh, that's a stronger woman than me.
But I guess my point is she did that on a word from the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he got born again.
Yeah.
And tore it up for God.
Yeah.
He's raised more people from the dead than I've ever heard of anybody else raising.
Yeah, that's true.
He's had tremendous, notable miracles in his ministry. My point is, there was an extraordinary circumstance there. And don't mistake your own pity for the voice of God. You can feel compassion for somebody, but understand that you can't be in a relationship with them because it's destructive to you.
Yeah.
You don't misunderstand pity and compassion for the leading of God. I'm talking about God speaking to you so clearly. You need to be patient with him or her or whatever the situation is. But absent those kind of words, I don't think there's anything wrong with holding people accountable and setting boundaries. But I realize at the same time that I'm saying that is just because somebody does something you don't like doesn't mean I'm okay. You got your tennis shoes dirty.
Yeah.
Or you
left a towel on the ground.
You're late from work again. I'm not putting up with this because Pastor Rhonda said I don't have to. That is not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, things that are genuinely harmful. Making dinner and they're late isn't harmful emotionally, mentally, spiritually.
Yeah.
I'll say this. The things that I have confronted Mark about, my husband, Pastor Mark, fall into one of three categories. I don't get in his face very often. I don't try to correct him or about much. If I do, it falls into one of three categories. Either he's doing something that's detrimental to his relationship with God. He's doing something that's detrimental to our relationship. or he's doing something that's detrimental to our family or our ministry. Unless it falls in one of those three categories, I don't write him about stuff. You know, I don't micromanage his life and criticize everything he does. And so many women, and women tend to do it, I think, more than men, although there could be men who do it too. They don't have to be recreated in your likeness and image. God brought you somebody different from you on purpose.
Yeah.
You know, we balance each other out. He's strong in areas where I'm not so strong. I'm strong in areas where he's not so strong. So we help each other that way. There's going to be differences in marriage, different perspectives, different ways of seeing things. So I'm not saying, you know, if he doesn't conform to everything you want him to do, then you set boundaries and kick his butt to the curb. That's not what I'm talking about. I almost heard somebody out there saying, fine, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I've been putting up with towels on the bathroom floor too long. But that's not what I'm talking about. But I almost heard somebody, it may not have been towels, but you are, you know, we're trying to think, okay, do I really need to put up with this behavior I don't like? That's not what I'm talking about. You know, anyway, we're all different people. We're all have strengths and weaknesses. I'm talking about things that are harmful. Harmful to your mental health, harmful to your physical health, harmful to your relationship with God, harmful to your family. Those are the kinds of things I'm talking about. Clear as mud?
Yes, clear as mud.
Okay.
Well, now to take a very hard right turn, I've been asking these questions sort of at the end of episodes. So if you, looking at this generation, if you would have one thing that you would like to lovingly call us out on. I know we've been low-key calling people out the whole episode, but generationally, if you have something that you would like to encourage us higher on, I open the floor to that now.
One thing I love about the younger generation is their lack of tolerance for religion and, forgive me, bullcrap. But I'll say this. Run after God with all your heart. Seek him. Spend time with him. You know, one of the saddest things for me as a pastor is people who never get beyond the religion to the relationship. Christianity was never meant to be a religion. It's a relationship between you and your loving Heavenly Father. Yeah. He wants to do life with you. He wants to be on your job with you. He wants to, you know, I tell people all the time, I sought him because of my upbringing. I sought him like a sailor clings to driftwood after their ship goes down. I sought him with all my heart as a young person. And because of that, I found him.
Yeah.
And he, I tell everybody he was the best husband to me before I met Mark. He did everything but take out the trash. I mean, who better to love on me than love itself? And he did. He went out of his way to tell me how much he loves me and how special he created me and all those things that emotionally we need to hear. Who better to advise you on relationships than he who knows the hearts of all people? Yeah. Who better to advise you on financial decisions than he who knows the future and the future of the stock market and the future of everything that's going to happen? You know, seek him. And I know that's one of the things that I love about this generation is that I think on a certain level they're doing that. But I would just encourage you not to withhold anything from him. No area of your life. You can trust him with your future. You can trust him with picking your spouse. You can trust him with knowing what's best for you career or job-wise or education-wise. Don't spend all your time plotting, this is the direction of my life. Yeah. No, take it and offer it up to him. And he'll take it and he'll blow his super on your natural and give you a supernaturally wonderful life. But you have to hear him to get it and not just do your own plan, not just do things your way, but offer your life a living sacrifice. And when you do, he gives it back to you, but he gives it back to you with his super blown on your natural so that you live a supernaturally wonderful life. I can honestly say that when I was growing up, I was always afraid to fully surrender my life to him because I didn't know what he was going to do with it. God forbid he should make me be an old lady missionary in some foreign country, never marry. I don't know where his path might take me. But you know what? He knows the desires of your heart.
Yeah.
He created you the way you are. And if you'll just give him your life, give him all of you and trust him with it. Follow his direction every step of your life. You'll be so fulfilled. From the moment I did that, from the moment I totally turned it over to him. Matter of fact, I was really going through a hard time. I don't know what time. Okay. I was really going through a hard time one time. And I honestly, it's probably the only time in my life I thought, you know what? I don't even know if life is worth living anymore. I don't even know if it's worth trying. And the Lord said to me, if you're willing to give your life that way, instead of just throwing it away and ending it, give it to me.
Yeah. It's good.
As long as you're willing to give your life.
Yeah.
Don't give it in death. Give it to me. Just give it to me. And so I said, all right, I will. But from that time, Destiny, honestly, he has taken me on such paths. It's been quite a ride. We've had amazing faith adventures. We've gone to nations. We've done all kinds of things. But it's been a wonderful ride. I can honestly say I am fulfilled as a woman. I am fulfilled in my career. I am fulfilled in every way imaginable because I gave him everything and I held nothing back. And that's what I want for every person. Please don't stop at the religion. Don't stop at punching the time clock on Sundays and just going to church. Serve him. Give him everything every single day. And he'll give you a life so far beyond your dreams that you'll be amazed at what he's done with you. Not a life that's always easy. I sat in huts made out of manure and ate rice full of bugs with my hands out of banana leaves. So that was not easy on my flesh.
Yeah.
But it was so worth it. To the way he made my life so worthwhile. The meaning and the significance he gave my life, even though sometimes it was hard on my flesh. And I want that for every person. I want that for every young person to know you can trust him. There's a song we sing, if I knew then what I know now, I would just give him everything.
I'd be still and let you work it out.
Thank you. Yeah. I'd be still and let you work it out. And that is so the truth. So the truth. You can trust him. You may not be able to trust another person to always do right by you, but you can trust him. I guarantee it.
All right. Do you have any final pearls of wisdom? Anything?
I don't think so. I'm all out of pearls.
You're all out of pearls.
I'm just
You've thrown your pearls, not before the swine, hopefully. But
no, I can't think of anything else we need to say.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on today. I appreciated it.
Yep.
All right.
Forgiveness is always worth the price. It starts with a decision. You have to decide to forgive. But once you decide, God will kick in and help you, and he'll set you free.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
That's my last pearl.
All right.
All right.
That was it. We'll see you on the next one.
Ciao.
Bye.